What's good, and welcome back to Kaya's Commentary. And if you're new here, welcome to Kaya's Commentary. We are officially back. In light of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes, after my last season, I opted to not continue on until the strikes were over. I very much could have continued on with book reviews, and I would have, but that honestly takes a lot. That would have taken a lot of time to reread certain books. Don't get me wrong, I am a book lover. I have books that I plan on reviewing. However, it would have been a rush to read and then just pump out this next season. So instead, I opted to just halt until the strikes were over. I can do that now. I can talk now about media, pieces of media, because the strikes are over. So we'll get into a really quick recap of some of the things the WGA and SAG-AFTRA won before we'll kick it into our first segment. This season round, I decided to do 3 segments. We'll do commentary, media review, commentary, and then round it out because I know my content can get a little long and I'm trying not to go over like the 45-minute mark. So let's get into it. WGA, they have better residuals, better writing room conditions, 10 to 20 weeks, consecutive weeks employment, depending on how the writer's room is set up and the TV show set up. They both, SAG-AFTRA and WGA, got better AI protection a little bit. For SAG-AFTRA, makeup and hair for all texture and skin tones, which a win is still a win, but why this rule being there at all is really it sucks, because like where it should have been a thing in the first place, but where was it when like Candace Patton and Kat Graham and Nicole Beharie were going through these kind of things, these very issues? A win is still a win, but that is just so bare minimum that has to be there in the first place. They also got pension and healthcare increases for background and more. I would go into more, but especially on the SAG-AFTRA side, the language is very legal jargon and it just takes me a little longer to actually fully understand that. But I can and will try to remember to drop their contracts from the official WGA and SAG-AFTRA websites in the bio when I come around to that side. So congrats to all. With that, let's get into our first segment, What's in the News, where I give my commentary on something happening in the news. Like I said, this is a podcast that offers commentary on pop culture topics, real world issues, and anything in between. So of course, news is not limited. So one of the biggest things in the news right now is the Hamas-Israel war. And before I get into the breakdown, I'll note that there are new elements to this war daily, and because of that, what I present to you as of recording might be outdated by the time I actually drop this episode, in which I'd have to come back and clarify a few things or add on to a few things. I am no way a historian. I am trying to pick up on this as best I can, just like everybody else. I'm trying not to listen to mainstream media because they're presenting Israel in this savior light when that's probably not true. So doing my own research, you really kind of have to waver through that propaganda. So just a little note, a little warning. Right now, here's my breakdown of the war. Also, you'll see me glancing off to the side because I want to be as accurate as I can about this, so I want to stick to my notes for this portion of the show. My information comes from Vox.com, CFR.org, and DNI.gov. So we'll go into a quick recap of what the Israel-Palestinian history is. We'll go into what the Hamas history is, how Palestinians feel about that, and then we'll go into the Hamas-Israel war, and then I'll give my thoughts and opinions on it. So, Israel and Palestine have been fighting over land for years, and I really want to say it kind of dates back to the Christian biblical days, but the conflicts in recent years probably stem from the tensions of the early 20th century, and of course it still goes back to land. As I get older, something that really perplexes, confounds me, I don't know, is we as humans fighting over land that we essentially have no claim to. Now, don't get me wrong, I can't stand those people that are like, oh, we live on a giant floating rock in space, we should just exist, da 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 da. I can't stand those people, but like, not to be that person. The idea of fighting over land that you really have no way of knowing who has claim to it, it perplexes me. However, um, that I guess it depends on who was there first, what nationality, what group was there first. But even still, it's like I don't know, fighting over land that I don't know. Like I think of gangs and them fighting over lands, territory, and it's like neither one of y'all got claim to it. But that's a gang thing. I guess it doesn't really matter in that sense. Anyway, let's keep it pushing. Um, so this still goes back to the early 20th century, still about land. So in Europe, many Jewish faith people were persecuted for their faith and they wanted land where they could freely practice it. They thought the best land to do that on was the Arab and Muslim territories in the then Ottoman and later British Empire. Of course, the natives there resisted. So what did the persecuted Jewish faith people do? They did what their persecutors did. They went over, they claimed land, and have been fighting over it ever since. Now, the United Nations has stepped in to try to quell the fighting, but their plan to divide the land between the two has failed because both sides were like, how do you equally divide that? We were here first. Oh, but we claimed it. So it's really a non-starter. In recent years, Israel controls most of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, which is home to thousands of Palestinians. So Palestinians live there, but Israel forces control it in a very restrictive way. So much so that many human rights activists have noted how Israeli forces are making life restrictive for the Palestinians and how they're still taking over land and how they're like basically cutting off human rights and necessities for the Palestinians. So human rights activists have made several pleas to try to combat that. So that's a quick recap of the Israel-Palestinian history. I hope that suffices. I'm gonna kind of keep it pushing, but that's a quick recap of that. So now let's get into what Hamas is. Hamas, which is an acronym that I won't even attempt to butcher, but basically it translates to Islamic Resistance Movement, is a Palestinian militant organization. It was founded in and around 1987, growing out of the Muslim Brotherhood, and originally they were created as an alternative to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They soon began to disagree with things, mainly the PLO and the Israel Prime Minister signing the Oslo. I might butcher some words, in which case I really am sorry. But the Oslo Accords, and that the Israel government was acknowledged at all, because to the Palestinians, this is their home. We're not going to acknowledge your government because you have no place here. And so they began to employ very violent tactics. And they took over control of the Gaza Strip in 2007, pushing out the Palestinian Authority. So Hamas has had no problem using violence to get their point across, their point of Israeli resistance across, and because of that, the US and many other countries have labeled them a terrorist group. Because of this, they don't receive funds through the proper channels and instead get funds from private donors, a couple of Islamic charities. I think Iran and somewhat Turkey also back them, and they also tax goods via tunnels that they use through Egypt. Egypt did shut that down, I believe, but then they started allowing commercial goods to go back through it, and that's how Hamas gets money, because they tax those goods. So Hamas, in theory, is in accordance with the Quran, the Sharia-based Palestinian basic law that is God's guidance of Muslims, and it's a mixture of the Quran and the Hadith and common sayings or practices of the Prophet Muhammad. However, in practice, Hamas controls women's rights. They have gender segregation in public, at least in the early 2000s they did. They have repression of Gazan media and activism in very restrictive ways, not allowing for the group to be checked. In addition, Palestinians have not voted in an election or for a president since around 2006 to 2008. And of course, that's not fully Hamas's fault. I think Israel and the Palestinian Authority president at the time also share blame, as the Palestinian Authority president He stopped the 2021, I believe, election because he was blaming Israel for not allowing Palestinians to go into Jerusalem or some territory to vote. So, but Hamas is kind of unliked by many Palestinians, according to a June 2023 poll that was found on the CFR.org page. Quote, 1/3 consider it the most damaging development for their people since the State of Israel's 1948 creation, end quote. However, it's also important to note that 1/3 would rather vote for Hamas over the Palestinian Authority. So there's that, and that's a quick history into Hamas. Again, I hope that suffices. I'm going to keep it moving. And like I said, I'm not a scholar, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I have all the information, but I would like to say that this is a basic overview. So that's a quick history into Hamas. So now let's talk about the October 23rd, 2023 conflict that has escalated into a war. So on October 7th, Jewish Sabbath, about 1,400 people were killed when Hamas militants bombed southern and central Israel. Many others were wounded as well as kidnapped. So Hamas was also able to storm several towns within the southern region, reclaiming it. Hamas's justification is Israel's oppression of Gaza, Palestinian lands, and Muslims. This has been labeled one of the deadliest attacks in Israel. Many people are likening it to like Pearl Harbor and 9/11, and I just, whoa, when you liken it to things like that, you have the patriots that are going to come out and say that Hamas is so in the wrong and that they're going to basically villainize all Palestinians, and I do not agree with that. This has escalated to a full-out war, with Israel meaning to, quote, eradicate the group with America and many of its other allies backing. They also claim to want to free hostages, but Israel and Hamas have really been trading blows ever since October 7th, and it's been like no ceasefire, so how can the hostages really get out? Israel has allowed Palestinian citizens to get out of the lower Gaza Strip. They gave them like a couple of hours, a day at best, before they gave them a few days, but it was not enough time for many to get out. And with countries like, I believe, Egypt and surrounding areas unwilling to take in many of those Palestinian refugees, they have nowhere to go. So Israel, I believe they've shut off water. They had at one point cut off the internet and other resources to an already suffering population. Quote, in the first 3 weeks of the Israel offense, its forces has killed more than 8,000 Palestinians in the enclave, around 40% of them children, according to the Gaza and Hamas-controlled health ministry. More than 300 Israel troops have also been killed in the fighting, the Israel Health Ministry has said, and that comes from CFR.org. So numbers and fatalities are growing more so on the Palestinian side, but what is clear is that Israel has the power. Israel has the power. They have the forces. Hamas, which has backing, certainly doesn't seem to have enough to combat, as of now, to combat Israel. They have the numbers and they have the support of most of their allies. So and now, it was a couple of days ago, maybe around Thanksgiving, there was finally a tentative ceasefire to allow the hostages out, and so hostages are being released. However, I don't know how much of a ceasefire that is, with Palestinians having to pick up the pieces, and is it really a ceasefire if the Israel forces are still there and they're still being restrictive, and is that really a ceasefire? How helpful to the Palestinians is that? But as of recording, that's about where I'll stop with the information before I go into my own opinion of it. Like I said, information grows daily, so as of recording, I may have missed some stuff as of recording, and by the time of release, certain things will happen, and I will try to come back and clarify things how I need to. But that's a summary, I hope a good summary of the Hamas-Israel conflict. And I really prefer to say Hamas-Israel conflict to Palestine-Israel conflict because, like I said, most Palestinians don't even agree with Hamas. However, they're fighting, whether or not you think they're fighting for them, I just prefer to say Hamas-Israel as opposed to Palestinian-Israel, because while Palestinians and Israelis have had conflicts, I feel like this is different. They will always have problems with them, but when you are a group that most of the people don't even like, the people that you're fighting for don't even like, there's a difference. So let's get into my opinion of it. Plainly, what Israel is doing is wrong. Cutting off basic human necessities and resources to Palestinians are wrong. They're suffering because you're being oppressive. That being said, Hamas does seem to be a terrorist organization and not helpful to the people they're fighting for. They're very restrictive. They are very restrictive towards the activism and social media. They do not allow themselves to be checked. I'm not gonna say real, but I don't want to say good either, because America allows its government to be checked, but is it still good? But there should be some checks and balances, and they don't. Many of them don't like them. They would vote for them over this, but they don't also agree. So they do kind of seem to be a little. However, saying that Israel is in the wrong is not being anti-Semitic. I'm sure that there's anti-Semitic rhetoric being thrown around. Of course, it's not by, I don't want to say it's by the Palestinians. I don't want to say it's by people who support the stopping of a genocide, right? Simply saying stop the genocide and the eradication of the Palestinians does not equate to Jews are bad. It's not a one or the other as far as civilians go. You can have sympathy for both and acknowledge that Israel has historically been oppressive. I'm an American who does not deserve to be bombed because America is shit. But I'm not going to be mad for people pointing out how historically oppressive America has been. People pointing out how historically oppressive America has been is not always saying death to Americans. And I shouldn't equate it to that. And this goes for Congo and all the other lands, because there are other places in that region and about that region that are being enslaved in their own homes. They're being forced to be workshops in their own homes. That's not okay. Free these people. Free these people. That shouldn't be controversial. It shouldn't. Just because Israel is an ally to America doesn't mean you can't check your allies. What they're doing is wrong. That's controversial to America, so be it. I don't know how saying stop the killing of innocent people, so be it. Now, here's where I get controversial to the other side. Not voting is also not the answer. We saw what not voting did in 2016 when people didn't want to vote for Hillary, either because she was a woman or because they didn't trust her, and they certainly didn't trust Trump, and they thought it was a whole joke. And then Trump won. Even though Hillary won the popular vote, Trump won because a lot of people didn't vote, because a lot of people threw their vote to a third party that didn't exist. I'm not gonna list Biden's accomplishments, but voting does help if you vote locally. A lot of y'all are not voting locally and want to yell about how voting every 4 years doesn't do anything. You know what? You're right. Voting for a Democratic president doesn't do anything when your governor, when your senator, when your mayor are all Republican. That does not do anything. Vote locally. What's happening there can very easily happen here. The Democrats are stopping that. They are doing something. They are stopping Republicans from doing what they say they will do. Republicans have said that they will be very restrictive to minorities in certain ways, to women in certain ways, they've said that. And you see that they can follow through because the highest power of the land, not the president, by the way. A lot of people are acting like, oh, we lost women's rights under Biden. We lost this under Biden. No. Biden was president, but those were Trump's actions, because the highest power in the land, the Supreme Court, are majority Trump picks or majority Republicans. So that's kind of ticking me off. Like, that's kind of ticking me off. Vote locally. Vote locally, because that also helps. Also, when the ancestors and when people of the past were voting, were marching to vote, times were not easy. The president, there's Democrats who only a couple years had decided that they could start getting black votes if they started talking about how they were going to protect black people and people of color. That was not an easy choice to make, knowing that a few years back it was flipped, it was reversed, you know? But they did it anyway because they know that voting for people who say that at the very least they're not gonna do what the other group is saying helps. It actually does help. Also, I just, I'm getting ahead of myself. But no one is trying to scare you into voting, because that's also, you're not going to scare me into voting. I'm not trying to. You should be scared. I'm not fear-mongering you with things that are in a distant dystopian future could happen. No, there's a very real possibility. There is a very real possibility that what's happening there and other restrictive things can very easily happen here when you have these Republicans who are saying that they more than likely will do these things, and they have the backing of the highest land, of the highest power in the land. This is you should be scared. You should be scared. Like, you should be scared, because that can very easily happen if Republicans get majority. Look, all I'm saying is I'm not gonna vote this year. I'm not gonna. You might not ever have to worry about that ever again if Republicans get majority. There's a very real possibility. You also know that every couple of years, I think they do vote to see if we can still vote. They have a vote every couple of years about whether or not people can still vote, black and brown people. Now, I might be getting a little murky with it, but there is a vote that happens every couple of years about whether or not you should still have the right to vote. So you might not have to worry about that, about not voting this year. If that's not fear-mongering, that's not a possibility in a distant, that's possible. That's very real possibility. Very real possibility. That's all I got. Like I said, if I have to come back and clear up some things or add on to things, I will. But let's kick into our next segment, something much lighter, a movie review. Let's go to the movies. Today's movie, The Nightmare Before Christmas. It has come to my attention that a lot of people don't really know what a gem this is. Like, I've seen a lot of people on TikTok like not really know what it is, and it's like, it's only the best movie you can watch 2 times a year. You can watch it for Halloween and Christmas. How many movies double as a Halloween Christmas film? Let's get into it. So, The Nightmare Before Christmas, it starts off with a song called This Is Halloween, where we see all the witches and vampires and goblins and ghouls of Halloween Town. And they're celebrating what an epic Halloween they had this past year. So their lord, their king, the Pumpkin King, Jack Skellington, he is the one that does all these elaborate plans. He's the one, him and the mayor. The mayor passes things by him. And so they're praising him. Oh, we had such a great Halloween this time. It'll be even better, even scarier next time. Yeah. And Jack is like, we did, didn't we? Cool, guys. Like, he is just not feeling it this Halloween. There's something missing for Jack. So as everyone goes about their business as to the plans for next Halloween, Jack is just wandering off to the cemetery. We see Sally. Sally is a rag doll that's been created by their evil scientist. He created her because he wanted company, but she has a mind of her own. She doesn't want to just hang out with this weird evil scientist. She got a little feelings for Jack, right? So she sees Jack wandering into the cemetery as she is getting a few herbs to poison, a few herbs to knock out the evil scientist. She knocks him out every now and then so that she can go roam, because he'll just keep her locked up in his tower. So she sees him roaming, and he is talking and playing with his dog, Zero, his ghost dog. And she sees how he's just saddened. He has a song, Jack's Lammet, I believe, where he's just singing about how sad and something is missing. Something is just missing. So she Sally goes back to the evil scientist, and she makes his meal. She's knocking him out. He doesn't trust her. He knows that she knocks him out a lot. So he's like, no, you taste it first. She has a spoon with holes in it, so she pretends to drink. He sees it's fine. He slurps it on down, and then he gets knocked out. So she goes about her business. She's making this little basket for Jack. Now, Jack has wandered all night into the forest, and he bumps into a tree, knocks himself down, and then he finds this tree. He finds several trees, and each tree has its own holiday. So there's Christmas, there's Thanksgiving, there's the Easter Bunny, and so on, right? Each tree has its own little holiday-shaped door. He sees the Christmas tree shaped door, and it's like, what's this? He opens the door, he gets sucked in, and he comes to in the world of Christmas. There's snow, there's lights, there's laughter, there's happiness. And so he's so curious about what this place is. He just roams around, and he finds Santa, right? He ends up at Santa's house, and he's like, oh, this place is so cheery. I want to embrace this cheer. So he's gone all night, and the residents of Halloween Town are looking for him. They're like, where did Jack go? What's going on? He's gone. Where is he? So they get all scared. The mayor, who's just like, no, you're the real king. I'm just elected. I can't do this. He has two faces. He has his normal face, and then he has behind his face, he has another face that's like his sad face, and he switches in between them. And I guess that's supposed to be like a scare tactic. But Jack finally comes back, and he's like, I have a surprise for you all, called the town meeting. So in the town meeting, he introduces what Christmas is. And no one really quite seems to get the concept. They're like, what's happy about this? What is it? Are these presents, this Jack in a Box, is gonna jump out and scare you? Like, they think Halloween. They're in their town of Halloween, which only deals with Halloween. They don't know anything about Christmas. They don't know how to spread that kind of joy. They only know how to spread spooky good fun, right? So Jack ends up having to explain it to them a different way. Instead of Santa Claus, he calls it Sandy Claus. And so he's like, okay, he rules over this town. He drops these off. He basically scarifies Christmas, and the residents finally get it. But Jack is like, well, he's still sad. He's like, they got it. They understand what it is, but also they don't understand. They're happy about it, but only because I scared it up for them. I want them to experience the real joy of Christmas and how it makes you feel fun inside. So he locks himself in his house. Well, he goes to the mad scientist first. He gets a few equipment, and then he locks himself in his house, and he is experimenting on ornaments, on lights. He's trying to make the paper mache snowflakes. He ends up making a spider. From there, we see all the residents like, something's wrong with Jack. What's going on? He's been locked up in his house for days doing experiments. Sally especially is like, something's wrong. He just doesn't seem to be himself. So this is when she makes him a basket of nice things. It's fish, it's some type of poison or something, and something else. And so she goes to his window, she drops it off. He's like, oh, thanks. He goes back down. He lifts it up through the window, so he's go back down to thank her, and she's gone. He's like, oh, she very likes him, and he kind of likes her, but it's also like he's so obsessed with Christmas. So he's experimenting, doing all these experiments. Finally, he gets to this notion of, okay, Christmas will just have to be ours. So he opens up his window, he yells out to the town people, "This year, Christmas will be ours." And so it presents itself as he's gonna steal Christmas. He's cackling when he says it. All the residents who think it's this scary thing are like, "Awesome, cool, cool, cool." So Sally is still trying to talk sense into him. She's like, "Yo, this isn't our holiday. I don't think this is what you need." He gives all the town people assignments. So some are to create toys, the evil scientist is to create reindeer, Sally is to create his Santa suit. Sally is like, "I just don't agree with this." Jack kind of brushes her off. He's like, "Nah, it's all right. It'll be all right. Just do this. You got it. You can do it." And then he tells 3 little bad trick-or-treaters, Shock, Lock, and Barrel, I believe their names are, to kidnap Sandy Claus. They first kidnap the Easter Bunny, take him back, and then get to Santa Claus. And Jack realizes what's missing from his suit. He has the boots, he has the fur, he has the red, he doesn't have the hat. He takes Santa's hat and he tells Santa, "Hey, you can have the year off this year. Don't worry about it." And he tells the 3 kids to make sure that he's comfortable. The 3 kids take him to Oogie Boogie. Now, Oogie Boogie is this outcast. I really want to say he represents scary. Like, Jack is this fun but spooky, and Oogie Boogie is this scary spooky. He's the one you really don't want to mess with. So they take him to him. They take Santa Claus to Oogie Boogie, and Oogie Boogie is like, "Let's have some fun with you. We're gonna torture you." He ties him up, and he's talking about how he's gonna eat him. Oogie Boogie's song has to be one of my favorite outside of What's This and Jack Slam It, I believe. Like, Oogie Boogie's song, he do his thing when his time come. So Jack goes to the real world and he's dropping up. Well, first, Sally is just so determined to stop this. So she pours fog juice into the fountain, which creates this really thick fog. None of the reindeers can see, except Zero. Jack's dog, he has a red nose, so he gets at the head of it and he flies the sled. So they go to the real world, they're dropping off all these presents, but the presents are scary. They're snakes, they're shrunken heads, they're scary jack-in-a-box. So police are getting all these reports about a person impersonating Santa Claus, which leads them to end up shooting down Jack and his carriage, his sleigh. And so the residents of Halloween Town are looking through the looking glass fountain and they're like, "Oh no, he's been shot down." And Sally is like, "I have to go fix this." So she goes to find Santa Claus. She finds him in Oogie Boogie's cave and she tries to release him, but Oogie Boogie catches on and ties her up too. Jack has a moment in the real world. Jack has a moment where he's like, "This isn't my holiday. I'm the Pumpkin King." That's also one of my favorite songs. And I, Jack, the Pumpkin King. Like, so many good songs. He realizes that he's the Pumpkin King and he has to set Christmas right. So he goes back to Halloween Town. He goes to find Santa Claus. He finds him and Sally in Oogie Boogie's cave. He and Oogie Boogie have a small duel before Jack bests him and Oogie Boogie is no more. Jack releases Santa Claus. He apologizes. Santa storms off before he's like, "Hey, don't steal nobody else's holiday. You need to be listening to this lady right here, Sally. She's the only one in this crazy insane asylum that makes any sense." So he goes back and he sets it straight. He sets Christmas straight. Sally and Jack, they kind of have a moment or where he kind of like apologizes to her. Then they go back to the town square where Santa is flying over Halloween Town and he drops off snow. So now the residents of Halloween Town kind of get to experience what Jack experienced with snow. And they're like, "What's this? This is so awesome. It's so cool." They're ice skiing, they're ice hockey skiing. Hockey's played on ice. Girl, anyway. There's ice skiing, hockey, throwing snowballs. And Jack, while happy now, he kind of walks back off into the cemetery. Sally sees and finds him, and they have another moment where it's hinted at that, they finally share in their niceties for one another, their appreciation for one another. And that's really the film. It really, to me, it's one of the best Halloween Christmas films ever. Like I watch it every year. It's right up there with Jim Carrey's The Grinch Stole Christmas and Charlie Brown's Christmas for me. It's in my top three, and I highly recommend it. Also, my only other thought about it is that there was kind of like a debate about whether it should get a prequel or a sequel. And while they went ahead and ruled out that it's not going to get a prequel or a sequel, I really feel like I would love to know what it is between Jack and Oogie Boogie. They don't explain it, but the two have clear animosity towards one another. And I wonder if Oogie Boogie was the ruler of Halloween Town before Jack, and then somehow Jack pushed him out, because Jack seems to be wholesome, good, spooky, and Oogie Boogie seems to be scary, frightening, screams, right? So like I want to know what that is. Like, do we was he there before Jack? What happened? That, I think that would be really an interesting prequel. Also acknowledging that not everything needs a prequel or a sequel, but you know, if you wanted to, and if you could come up with some good villain songs, like, possibilities. I will give it an 8.5 out of 10. I watched this at a very young age and liked it, but I was watching things like Supernatural and The Vampire Diaries at a very young age, and so I might be weird. So for that reason, I won't really say it's wholesome, family friendly, but I really think, you know, 10 and up, I think it's a good family friendly film. I think, you know, I don't think it's anything too spooky, anything too scary or too obscene, right? But it, you know, it can get there for some, I guess. So 8.5 out of 10. The songs I love. I don't really have a problem with any of the characters. I just think we could definitely go into Oogie Boogie and Jack's history and why there was a clear animosity towards them from the jump. Like, even when Jack assigned Lock, Shock, and Barrel the assignment, he was like, do not involve that no good Oogie Boogie. Like, the animosity. We could get into it. But that's it for Let's Go to the Movies. Let's kick it into our third segment. Online conversations, where I give my commentary on an online conversation I've seen. So because Ballad of the Snake and Songbird, is that the title? I don't know, is popping up, so is appreciation for the original Hunger Games trilogy. However, with that comes something that I find so incredibly aggravating and illogical: Gale shippers. So this is to set the record straight on multiple things. One, on Gale, on this love triangle between Gale, Katniss, and Peeta, which is non-existent, and people's complete not understanding of what the Hunger Games was. So, one, Gale was never an option. I've seen so many people act like Peeta wasn't entitled to his initial anger at the start of Catching Fire. People acting like there was a love triangle, and the audacity to act like it was a competition, and that the Hunger Games didn't have any world building. And it's mad frustrating to me because it's very clear that y'all did not read the books. To you, I say, read the freaking books, people. Like, I try so hard not to get frustrated about people's opinions of my favorite things, because people are allowed to their opinions and they don't always have to line up with mine. My favorites might not be other people's favorites. But when y'all opinions are very clearly wrong, it's mad frustrating. It's just mad frustrating. By far, The Hunger Games was the best YA adaptation as far as being accurate to page to screen the series, but it is also beneficial to read the freaking books too. Peeta was very much entitled to his anger at the start of Catching Fire. He had no intentions of surviving the Hunger Games, did everything in his power to get Katniss home, find out that, oh, you do like me like I like you? For real? Oh, we can get out of this together? We actually got out of this together? And now you don't like me? And knowing the character of Katniss, She probably didn't even dignify Peter with a conversation about how it was just a rule so that they could get up out of there together. She probably just got mad distant and he had to put the pieces together himself. Like, he was very entitled to that anger. But aside from that, he got over it relatively quickly. He was like, okay, you did what you did to survive the games, to get us both home. This is a game that we have to play. And he was very adamant about not forcing her even more into a situation that they were forced into. When Katniss suggests marriage, Peter's like, sure, let's do it. And then he storms off. In the book, if you read the book, you would know that Katniss was like, why he storm off? I thought he wanted it anyway. And Haymitch got to be like, girl, he wanted it to be real, sis. He wanted it to be real. This isn't real. Like, he was very adamant about not forcing her into that. Gail was the one sitting here complaining, do you like me? Check one or no. Take yes or no. It seemed like a real act to me. Like, that was Gail, not Peter. And the only reason Katniss was giving Gail attention probably after the initial Hunger Games, because she felt like she owed him something, and he felt like she owed him something. They were both adamant about, like, oh, this is life, it shouldn't be, but it is, and we'll probably get together, we'll probably settle for one another. But when Gail realized, oh, she doesn't have to settle for me anymore, like, but we grew up together, I took care of your family, like, we were in this together, and now all of a sudden he come along and you, like, and Gail's not entitled to that, because Katniss has never, she's made it clear, I don't want to marry, I don't want to have kids, we'll probably get together, but there was no real, I don't remember there being like a real conversation like that. Like, that's all in Gail's head. Gail was probably really no competition to Peter. Like, Peter would make jokes, which is another reason you should probably read the books, because Josh Hutcherson played Peter down, but book Peter is, this man was the cynicalness, the sarcasticness, the cracks, the wise cracks. You really should read the book. That was Gail. That was all Gail. And I honestly hate I hate that they told Suzanne Collins that she should have played this up like it's some dystopian Twilight. It's not. There's no love triangle. Gail was never an option. He's a settlement at the start of the Hunger Games, and after the Hunger Games and then on, she only gives him attention because she feels like she owes him something. But it was Peter since they allied in the Hunger Games, since she realized that she wanted him to live. It's been Peter. Like, it's been Peter. And I'm not saying that Gail had bad writing, but he didn't have his character arc for y'all to sit here and be vying for him like this. Like, really, y'all find Liam Hemsworth aesthetically appealing? Fine. But Gail was not an option. He did not have this build up for him to have these fans. Like, it's weird. Y'all just like Liam Hemsworth, which is fine. I sure hope y'all show out for him when The Witcher come around. Like, Gail didn't have this build up for y'all to have this liking for him. He was not an option. Like I said, it was Peter from day one, from like when they allied. And seeing that take about the world building, like, I saw a take on Twitter, oh, Hunger Games has the worst world building. Again, I try not to get so upset about people who don't agree with my favorites. My favorites aren't other people's favorites, but when your take is so obviously wrong, like it was obviously wrong, like, are you telling me only each district only has one resource? Almost like that's the point, and they have to be super dependent of the capital. Y'all did not read the books, and you didn't even have to read the books to get that that's the whole point of the story, that the districts are mad dependent of the capital. That's the point. And so many people in those comments not getting that point. You didn't even have to read the book to get that point, but please read the book. Like I said, I try hard not to get upset over stuff, but when your take is obviously mad wrong. I saw another take a couple months ago talking about, oh, I didn't like the Hunger Games because I didn't like the fact that Katniss saved Peter. Like, she was badass until that point. What? Her killing Peter would have made her a capital tool, which she is very adamant. Like, y'all didn't read the book, and that's the whole point. Like, oh, it's driving. It's driving. Like, me personally, I don't think we need a story about Snow because I feel like it'll make people have sympathy for Snow, which I've seen people already do. But you know what I'm not gonna do? I'm not gonna personally talk my mess about the contents of that book and that movie when I've not read it, when I've not seen it. You know what I am gonna do? I'm gonna go read it. I'm already bored with it, I can tell you that much, but I am reading it. And when I get done reading it, I'm gonna watch the movie. And then I'm gonna talk my mess publicly about whether or not I, as a reader and a viewer, felt like we needed it. That's what I'm gonna do. Otherwise, I can't make that distinction and I have no clear understanding of it. Like, I'm gonna do that after I have understanding on it. Stop speaking on stuff and you are obviously wrong. You obviously didn't take the time to understand it. Like, stop. That's mad frustrating. Mad frustrating. When your take is obviously wrong, like, oof, stop. This is also another problem with the Snake and Songbirds for me, is that people want to talk about the original again, but they are very clearly not remembering what happened and they didn't even read the book. Like, stop. With that, that's online conversations, and that's Kai's commentary. If you like this episode, be sure to like this episode, hit the thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button and the bell so you get notified when new videos drop. Follow me on all my social medias. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below on any of my segments. Be respectful. We can have a conversation with one another, but only if we be respectful. Any hateful comments, any ignorant comments will be deleted. Also, one last note, throughout this whole episode, which I should have started with, I just forgot to start with, sorry about the mess. I no longer have an office because I can't have nice things, but that's neither here nor there. Just bear with me, okay? Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you next time.